From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Our series of General Assembly debates continues. This week on Newsmakers, voters in Warwick Senate District 29 will be deciding who to send to Smith Hill in the primary, as the Democrat who succeeds will go unchallenged in November. Incumbent State Senator Michael McCaffrey is seeking his 10th term in the Senate. An attorney, he is chairman of the powerful Senate Judiciary Committee. Laura Pisaturo is a former prosecutor for the Attorney General's office. She then worked for Victim Advocacy Center Day One and is now in private practice. McCaffrey, Pisaturo, head-to-head on this week's Newsmakers.
Good morning. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the panel, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi and Eyewitness News analyst Arlene Violet. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning. I want to thank you both for agreeing to join us on the program. The race, as I pointed out in the beginning, is particularly important since whoever moves on from here is going unchallenged in the general election. I want to begin first with a simple opening question. I will give each of you 30 seconds to respond, and we're going to start with the incumbent. Mr. McCaffrey, why should voters re-elect you to the state Senate?
Voters should re-elect me to the state Senate. I have a young family. I have children, son 15, daughter 13, two daughters 10 and 9. I want them to grow up in the city of Warwick like I grew up into the city of Warwick, to enjoy the city of Warwick like I enjoyed the city of Warwick. While I've been in the Senate, I've done things that help the city of Warwick. I pushed for the car tax surcharge, which brings approximately $900,000 to the city of Warwick. I've also overridden the governor's veto on a bill this year that protects the residents and Governor Francis from having to hook up to sewers on a mandatory basis.
Mr. McCaffrey, thank you. Your time is up. I'll ask you the same question, Ms. Pisaturo. Why should you be elected to state Senate?
Good morning. I think if there ever was a time for change in Rhode Island, especially in District 29, it's now. I'm a lifelong Rhode Islander, and Warwick is a great city, and I love making it my home. As a prosecutor, I stood up to organized crime and crooked cops. I put drug dealers in jail, and I supported victims against their abusers. As an advocate, I gave a voice to kids who were abused. I'm proactive, I'm accountable, and I'm accessible in my neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Pisaturo. Let's begin here with last week, actually. We had a firestorm of response after our debate last week. I asked the candidates about whether or not the General Assembly should give the Ethics Commission the power to police legislators again. State Representative Peter Petrarca stated he thinks, like the U.S. Congress, the General Assembly should create an ethics committee and they should, quote, police themselves. Mr. McCaffrey, do you think that's a good idea?
I don't think that's a good idea that the General Assembly should police itself. Right now we have the Ethics Commission. We also have laws relative to criminal activities. We've seen the federal government and the state government exercise their authority over that in charging people, and actually a number of people have been convicted of that over the years. The last couple of years in the General Assembly, since the quote-unquote Irons decision, we have heard numerous pieces of legislation relative to the Ethics Commissions. People have come in and testified for and against those pieces of legislation, and people against the legislation have said, this legislation is going too far. This is going too far. The Ethics Commission is going to be running the General Assembly. If we're going to change the authority of the Ethics Commission, we should also look at the separation of power to see how that's going to interact with that. Is the separation of powers, who's going to appoint them, how are they going to be appointed, and who's going to...
This answer sounds eerily similar to something Senate President Teresa Paiva-Weed said on this program, and she raised the separation of powers issue as well. I'm just kind of struck that the voters' intent in the mid-'80s was to police everybody, including the General Assembly. Do you think you should be going against the voters' intent when they put that into law?
Since the voters passed that in the 80s, there has been passed in the early 90s, in 1994, legislation that changed things, that made a separation of powers with the legislature.
Okay, then how should we police the General Assembly?
Well, there are certain criminal laws that can police the General Assembly.
Leave it completely up to law enforcement.
Leave it up to law enforcement and work to address the concerns of the Ethics Commission, changing the Ethics Commission, and separation of powers all in one.
Ms. Pisaturo, how would you vote on the Ethics Commission? Would you vote to restore it or agree with your opponent here?
I think an internal committee at the General Assembly is important. I think it fosters accountability, but I don't think there's any substitute for an outside group being the people's watchdog. I do believe we need to give the Ethics Commission more teeth. I think that's what the people deserve. That's what they've asked for. So it makes no sense to me, and I think we do them a disservice when we ask them, do you want this to happen? They give us a clear declaration that they do, and then we ignore it.
Well, what about his point? You're a lawyer. What about his point that separation of powers was passed in the mid-90s, and in so much, the Senate president said, you know, I'm concerned since the governor appoints the members of the Ethics Committee that this is going to be the executive branch breaching into the legislative body. Are you worried about that?
I'm not worried about it because I think we can have a process to work that out. I don't think that should be an excuse for not doing it.
Okay, Ted?
This morning we got the new jobless rate for Rhode Island, 10.8%. It's the second highest in the nation, just before we heard on air. Once again, in Nevada is the only place that's higher. The nation is recovering much faster than Rhode Island. We're seeing it come down much more quickly there. I want to start with you, Mr. McCaffrey. Why hasn't the Assembly taken more action to bring the jobless rate down faster? Why things are so much worse here than in the rest of the nation?
It's a national and global recession that we're in.
But Rhode Island is my point, though, is we are the second highest. Why can't we do something to at least be 25th?
As you can see from the numbers that came out today, the unemployment number is moving in the right direction. It's moving slowly, but it's moving in the right direction. In the General Assembly this past year, we did a number of things that can help small businesses. We passed legislation to change the fire code to make it not as restrictive as it has been. We also passed legislation that's going to say that every rule and regulation that's passed affecting businesses, we're going to do a cost analysis study to see if that's effective for the businesses.
So you're satisfied with what we're seeing right now? You're satisfied with the actions that have been taken? It's enough?
I think that the General Assembly is taking actions. It's a global issue. It's a national issue, the recession that we're in. Are there things that we can do? There probably are things that we can do. We've lowered the income tax. That's helping people. We've lowered the corporate tax. That's helping people. We've done things like that over the last couple of years.
Ms. Pisaturo, it's easy on the stump to say the unemployment's too high and you're going to bring it down, but I want to know what new policies would you propose or support up on the Smith Hill that would change things?
I think what the General Assembly has done is a good start, but I think it also comes too late. It's not been a secret but that we've had the second highest unemployment rate in the country, and we've had it for some time. We are consistently the first to come into the recession and consistently the last to come out of the recession. So it's great. We're streamlining regulations. We're creating greater access to capital, but we need to do more of that, and we need to do it long-term, consistently. Okay?
That's pretty vague
and I think,
still,
well,
though.
no, hang on, I'm getting there.
All
okay,
right.
And I think that also to do it in the past 1 year, past 2 years, also does a disservice to small business owners. I think, in addition to doing that, because I think we need more of it, you know, but I think we should look at something like the flat tax. In 2006, the General Assembly passed the flat tax. Okay, and it benefited Rhode Island's top wage earners, okay, the biggest wage earners, and it was pushed through the General Assembly with the promise that it was going to spurt job growth, okay? So my question to the senator is, where are the jobs?
Well, the flat tax is gone now, though, because of the new income tax reform. So how can we blame it on the flat tax at this point?
Well, because I think what we can blame it on, and what we can also be more proactive about, is the lack of attention that the General Assembly pays to this on an ongoing basis. You know, it's easy to act in an election year, but Rhode Islanders are struggling. They're struggling every day to make their mortgage payments. Why don't we invite small businesses to the table? We just had 38 studios that people are still reeling from. It was an insider deal. My opponent voted for it. That hurt small businesses. I think we need to bring confidence back into Rhode Island government, so it's about what you know, it's not about who you know. Senator, there were a lot of small businesses that could have benefited from the money that was given to the EDC.
Senator, you are chair of the Judiciary Commission. On your website, or committee rather, on your website you have a picture with a former state senator who got a plum job as administrator of the Workers' Compensation Court. I'm sure you're aware there is a perception of cronyism up in the General Assembly, particularly with magistrates, some of whom are recycled from either family and or past politicians. Why should you not support putting magistrates through the Judicial Commission process?
My response to that would be, I believe that in lieu of magistrates, we should create more judgeships. Those people go through a process. They have certain power and authority. With respect to the magistrate process now, each individual court establishes their process on how the magistrates are going to be nominated, how they're going to be selected, and things of that nature. I know that in the General Assembly that we have the nominees, when they come to us, fill out an application. They fill out an application. There's also a state police investigation.
Well, you know,
I also know that a number of people who have become magistrates have gone through the judicial nominating process and been on a list to be presented to the governor.
Yeah, later on, when they want to go to the next level.
I disagree with you there. Some of them have been on the list before they were appointed to be magistrates.
Well, that may be, but the point is your position is leave it as it is.
No, that's not my position. My position
well, you said let it be up to the judges.
My position is I think if we should create judgeships as opposed to magistrates.
Okay, so you're not willing to change anything about magistrates right now because of that position?
No, my position is we should create judgeships.
Should we create judgeships, or should the magistrates go through a judicial process?
Whether we create more judgeships and eliminate magistrate positions, the issue is still the same. There needs to be an open and transparent vetting process so everyone knows what's happening. I think we should increase the revolving door law from 1 year to 5 years, so perhaps there's more turnover in the General Assembly, less opportunity or possibility for influence. I think that's one step we can take that will impact this and a lot of other processes in state government.
Ms. Pisaturo, let's keep it with you. You wrote in an editorial, quote, "We must find fair and accurate ways to measure both teacher and student performance." I'm sure people don't want an inaccurate way to measure student and teacher performance, so why don't we try and get specific? Do you support using student scores from standardized tests like NECAP as part of an annual evaluation of teacher effectiveness?
I think that's one way to measure teacher effectiveness.
What are other ways?
I think other ways would be to make sure that teachers are part of the solution, that they're part of the tools that we look at to measure their performance, and also to measure whether or not we're giving them the tools they need to properly perform in the classroom. Same thing with students. If we're not investing in buildings, if we're not investing in books, if we're not investing in and looking at what are the best practices nationwide, okay, for teacher evaluation, which should include teacher validation, and for student evaluation, then we're doing a disservice to them. So I think we do need to look at best practices.
Mr. McCaffrey, how do you feel about standardized test scores for teacher evaluation?
I don't believe that standardized test scores will effectively say how good a teacher really is. Every school is different. Just within the city of Warwick, you have different communities and different children coming to the different schools from different backgrounds. The teachers in those schools that are not as wealthy as the other schools, you can see that the teachers have put more time into it to make sure the kids are taken care of from the basic levels. In other schools, more parents are involved.
I think the heart of this question, and just to wrap it up before we go to a break here, is sometimes boils down to teacher tenure. How do you both feel about teacher tenure? There's an attitude out there from many parents that bad teachers can't be let go. Do you still support, or how do you feel overall about teacher tenure?
I believe that teachers should have protections so that they cannot be let go on a whim.
Ms. Pisaturo, teacher tenure?
I think due process is important in any type of employment setting. So the collective bargaining process should include very fair, accurate, and open ways for measuring teachers so that as we look at the whole package, including tenure, it's open and it's reasonable.
A very quick follow-up. Senator McCaffrey, you sponsored the binding arbitration bill for teachers that passed in the Senate. Would you have voted for that if you were in the Senate?
If the process is fair and it includes shared accountability, yes.
I would like to add to that. That binding arbitration bill that did pass the Senate was a last best offer bill. So both parties would put their best offer forward, and the arbitrator, who would be a retired judge, would make the decision on what one to select. The arbitrator will also have the ability, based on the financial condition of the city or towns, to make certain decisions with respect to that.
All right, we're going to take a break on Newsmakers. We have a debate between State Senator Michael McCaffrey and his challenger Laura Pisaturo. This is for Senate District 29 in Warwick. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my right, Ted Nesi and Arlene Violet. We have a debate this week between State Senator Michael McCaffrey, his challenger Laura Pisaturo. It's Senate District 29 in Warwick. Arlene?
Ms. Pisaturo, Warwick is completing a study relative to taxing potentially nonprofits. The big elephant in the room is the Airport Corporation. As you know, the airport's valued at $1.3 billion. They do give some tax revenues to the city of Warwick. But can you, or would you favor any specific changes to taxing any other aspect of the corporation's operation?
I would certainly look to my local officials, the mayor and the city council, on that particular question. I mean, that's recent news, and I think it has worked in cities like Providence with the universities. I don't see why something like that couldn't work in Warwick, especially with the Airport Corporation. I think that because we have the potential to bring more revenue into Warwick with the expansion of the airport, then the city should absolutely make sure that it receives its fair share to help our citizens improve their quality of life.
Senator, some argue that the airport already is giving $500,000 for fire and police. There certainly is a share of revenue from the automobiles parked there, et cetera. And there's the flow effect from restaurants and airports, so don't kill them by taxing them more. Your position is?
Well, obviously there's a car rental surcharge that brings over $900,000 a year to the city of Warwick. Recently, in this past legislative session, I was able to work with the mayor to get Johnson & Wales to enter into a memorandum of understanding where Johnson & Wales for the Radisson Hotel is going to pay the city of Warwick $40,000 this year and a total of $400,000 over the term of that.
But hands off further with the Airport Corporation. Did you see room for any other taxes to make them corporate?
Well, obviously the Airport Corporation is going to be expanding, and it's going to bring more business to Warwick, hopefully, and Warwick will get money from, i.e. the meals tax. There'd be more rentals coming in for the car rental surcharge. And you may want to sit down with the governor and the mayor and have them try to work something out between them. Even though the Airport Corporation is a quasi-public that would have to agree on it, but the governor certainly could work with the mayor of Warwick to get something there, I believe.
Mr. McCaffrey, House Speaker Gordon Fox on this program said he would make it a priority to bring same-sex marriage up for a vote in the House. The Senate is widely believed to be the roadblock on this issue, and in fact, you are the chair of the committee that handles the legislation on the Senate side. Why has this never been brought up for an up or down vote in your committee?
The same-sex marriage bill has been heard numerous times in the Senate Judiciary Committee.
But never voted on.
Never voted on.
The same-sex marriage, the civil union bill was voted on last year. It was passed by the General Assembly, and I voted for that bill. The same-sex marriage bill has been heard by the Senate Judiciary numerous times, and Senator Perry, I assume, has done a head count of the committee, has done a head count of the Senate, and said, I may not have the votes for this.
Why not bring it up for an up or down vote and find out then?
Find out.
That, I have no problem. My position is I believe that a marriage is between a man and a woman. There are 35 states, over 35 states that consider that the way that a marriage is between a man and a woman.
I want you to respond, Ms. Pisaturo.
It's disconcerting to me that we are putting equal protection, we're giving it a back seat. You know, all families in Rhode Island deserve equal protection of the laws, and they deserve the respect of our state government. So I think even more than giving it an up or down vote, we should be advocating for it in Rhode Island. I have long been a supporter of equal rights and equal protection for the lesbian and gay community, for the elderly, for kids. This is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer. This needs to happen in Rhode Island, and we need to focus on bringing jobs back to Rhode Island as well.
She says it's in essence, a civil rights issue. You don't believe it is?
I do not believe it is. The Supreme Court has not told us it's a civil rights issue at this point in time.
You need the Supreme Court to tell you that? How about how you feel when you're thinking about other people on the other side? You need the judiciary to tell you if it's a civil rights issue?
My position is and has been consistent over the years that I believe that a marriage is between a man and a woman. My opponent has a different position on that.
And yet most Rhode Islanders agree with me.
I disagree with you with respect to that, but...
Polls show 50% support for it last year. Let's move, though, to... I'll stick with you, Mr. McCaffrey, actually. Will you consider running for Senate President after Teresa Pipeley?
Right now, I'm running for re-election to the Senate. I've worked with Senator Pipeley over the years, and I'm going to continue to support her.
But at some point, she'll probably finish. Will you consider running? Or do you have no interest?
At this point in time, I'm not interested in running while she's the Senate President.
After, though?
I have to see what what the landscape looks like at that point in time.
He's being very coy, but this talk at the State House is that Senator McCaffrey is a leading contender to replace Teresa Piveweed when she's done. Not to say there's any coup out there or anything before the rumor mill begins. But Ms. Pisaturo, isn't that an argument in favor of keeping him in District 29? You know, the people of Warwick, if they had the Senate president looking out for them, we know how powerful those two positions are at the Assembly. Maybe they should keep someone who will have that kind of pull.
People in District 29 need a strong advocate that they know and they believe is actually present in the neighborhood, that they know and they believe is actually standing up for them at the State House. My opponent has been part of Senate leadership for years, so whether he holds the title of president or not, I don't think it's going to change business as usual for the residents of District 29.
Your response?
To what?
to the idea that you're not available in the neighborhoods, you're not working out with people in Warwick.
I totally disagree with my opponent with respect to that. I have a family in Warwick. I'm always in Warwick. My children are involved in activities in Warwick. Over the past couple of years, I've got a number of grants for different groups in Warwick, whether it be the Connecticut Village Association, the Academic Decathlon, the Rocky Point group that wants to work with Rocky Point. Those are important things that I've done in Warwick.
I just, real quick, I'm sorry, Arlene,
Sure.
but with grants briefly, that's been sort of a hot button issue when you think about the Sports Institute and how that exploded. A lot of people feel like that's a slush fund to get reelected. You just hand out that money. Legislative grants, should they continue? I'm guessing you're going to say yes.
I think they should continue. Look at the organizations that I've been able to help with that. Volunteers of Warwick Schools, different baseball organizations within the city of Warwick, the Academic Decathlon.
So why not put this money in so it can be voted on rather than just being handed out willy-nilly?
I think the way it happens now is good. These little groups are getting little amounts of money that make them survive. If you have a baseball league and you're able to get them $1,000 and that keeps the cost down, the kids are playing in that league, I think that's fantastic.
Very briefly, up or down on legislative
Having
grants.
grant money accessible to nonprofits that are struggling to help our community is important. The way it's being done is not right. Okay, so I don't think the way it's being done is how we should do it. It needs to be an open process, it needs to be fair, and folks need to be accountable for the money they receive.
Some municipalities are obviously struggling with their pensions. The governor had asked for a repertoire of tools to ameliorate some of those problems that didn't get out of the General Assembly. What role could and should the General Assembly have in helping municipalities deal with pension crises? Senator?
The municipal pensions are different than the state pensions.
Yes.
The state pensions could be changed by legislation. Municipal pensions, a lot of that is contractual. The municipalities, we've seen Providence being able to negotiate a changing of their pension system with the retirees and the current members. In Warwick, our mayor in Warwick had got the city employees and retirees to make some concessions.
So leave it there. You don't see a role for the General Assembly.
In addition, in Central Falls, we saw the bankruptcy court come in and change that system.
So no role for the General Assembly.
But I think after the municipalities try and do it themselves, then the General Assembly, if we have to do anything, we could look at it and do anything that we feel is necessary.
Ms. Pisaturo?
I think our role is always to help cities and towns and bring parties together. So I think what Mayor Taveras and what Mayor Avedisian have been doing in Providence and in Warwick are really good examples of how leaders on both sides can come together with shared accountability and open discussion and come to reasonable outcomes. If they need to look to the General Assembly to help them build bridges, then I think we can certainly take on that role, because all of us need to be advocates for positive outcomes that help all Rhode Islanders.
A litmus test on pensions for you then, Ms. Pisaturo. We know that Mr. McCaffrey voted for pension reform. How would you have voted on it?
I think it's an easy question to say, what should we have done? I think the real question is, what should we be doing going forward? And I think...
Would you have voted for the landmark pension reform that came up for a vote last fall?
Again, I think we can point fingers and say what I wouldn't have done is waited for the last minute for the pensions to become a crisis. What I would have done is act more timely over the years. If I had been in office for 18 years, I would have been asking the questions year after year.
You were just not answering my question. This is something you're going to have to do as a lawmaker, and that is take a vote on the Senate floor.
And that's what I'm doing. And I'm taking a vote on the process, Tim.
Would you have
and that's
voted
something
up
that we
or
don't
down
do.
on the pension reform bill?
I think if the pension reform bill didn't take into account, it didn't have everybody around the table, then I would have voted it down.
All right, well, this might be an uncomfortable section for you. I'm going to ask both of you a yes or no question since we're running out of time. And as I struggle to find my notes here, should the, yes or no, we'll start with you, Mr. McCaffrey, should the Economic Development Corporation continue to exist?
I think Gary Sass in the past couple of weeks made a good recommendation, and I think it should be looked at and studied to change it.
Ms. Pisaturo?
Yes, with changes and accountability.
Ms. Pisaturo, to you, do you support a push by many mayors out there that want to see an expanded use of publicly funded charter schools?
I think that charter schools should be a tugboat, not a life raft. I think they have a lot to offer us, so I think they should be part of the equation.
Okay, Mr. McCaffrey.
I think certain charter schools should be part of the equations.
Yes or no? Mr. McCaffrey, would you support a bill raising the income tax on Rhode Islanders making $250,000 or more?
I signed the bill that Senator Miller put in last year to do that.
So you would vote for it?
I would vote for it, yes, I would.
Would you? Okay,
Yes.
Ms. Pisataro. Okay. Ted?
Letter grade for Senate President Teresa Paiva-Weed.
I think Senator Paiva-Weed deserves an A-. Over the last couple of years, she's had some difficult decisions to make.
Well, we don't have much time, and an A- speaks for itself, but I'm sure she appreciates it.
Senate leadership, C-.
C-.
Okay, good.
Letter grade for Governor Chafee.
B.
C.
All right.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate both of you joining us on
Thank
this
you
program.
very much for the invitation.
Again, our guest this week,
Thank
State
you.
Senator Michael McCaffrey, his challenger, Laura Pisaturo. That is State Senate District 29 in Warwick. If you missed any of the program, you can catch it on our website, WPRI.com. This is our third General Assembly debate that we have had in recent weeks, so if you're going out to the polls on September 11th, or even after that in the general election, be sure to take a look at those so it can help you make a choice. For Arlene Violet and Ted Nisi, I'm Tim White. We will see you next week on Newsmakers.